Hello, hello, hello. I am Sable. This is the Full Out Healing show and podcast where I, your host, Sable, talk about my healing journey as a survivor. Now, I'm really excited for today's episode because it's a new type of episode, and it's a segment called Healing Tool of the Day. And the inspiration from this came from, and I'll actually talk about it in this episode. I was a little bit like, I don't know if struggle busting is the right word, but I was having an inner conflict, and I use this tool I picked up in my healing journey to support me through it. And I thought to myself, how awesome is that? How cool would it be to share this on the show? And so welcome to, this is episode 19, but this is the first episode that is about the segment that is healing tool of the day. And for each episode that is on this segment or a topic, I'm going to talk about a dilemma that brought this up, the old strategy that I used to handle that dilemma, the moment of surrender, that moment that brought me to my knees where I was like, this ain't gonna fly no more. I need a different strategy. The new strategy that I now use, which is the topic of the episode, and what it does for me, that new strategy, and then an invitation for you, my fellow listener that is joining me on this magnificent journey, okay? So the first healing strategy or healing tool of the day is giving myself grace. And I have to say this before I get into it. This is something that I was able to learn over time only after people had done this for me, after I had sort of allowed myself to be vulnerable with people and they offered me grace. So it was kind of modeled through the compassion, care, and love the people in my support group, in my support network offered me. And it was through them doing that for me that I was able to learn how to eventually do it for myself. But it still took time because, it still took a moment of surrender for me to accept this as a new strategy. And I'll get into that now. So the dilemma that I recently have been experiencing, it more specifically has been feeling anxious about my posting schedule for this show and podcast. I've also been feeling anxious about posting about a group coaching program that I want to launch for Black women who are school and district leaders for my business. I felt anxious about it because the plans I created did not match like the action I was taking. And that's sort of like the general theme of what the dilemma is sort of the tension and distress, like the emotional distress I felt for not being where I thought I was supposed to be and for not following through with the plan that I wanted, right? Like I just didn't like that feeling, and it just sort of kicked up all of this like it kicks up this negative self-talk, and it can really, and that actually brings me into my old strategy, right? What did I used to do when I have this sort of anxiety about not being where I'm supposed to be, or when I have anxiety about not following the plan of where I should be because I had planned it out and that's what I said I committed to, right? My old strategy was really to let my negative self-talk run amok. And not only did I let my negative self-talk run amok, I really identified with it. Like if my negative self-talk was like, oh my gosh, like you're so not following through, then I became a person who never follows through, right? It was never just like an action or like a moment. It became a character trait and an inherent character flaw. And that just, it always leads to paralysis for me. It just does. Like, and so, which brought me to my moment of surrender. Now, with this group coaching program that I'm wanting to launch, I had like 2 weeks of paralysis very recently around like just not doing the things I had planned for. And what brought me to this surrender was actually this journaling activity I was doing about money, where I had to write down how I felt about money now and my current financial situation. Then I had to circle all of the words that were feeling words. And then I had to ask myself, when did I first feel this way about money? And that was wild, because I thought of some incidents very clearly, but I had to keep going back. And then I was finally able to identify like the series of incidents, like the core thing that first taught me that emotion about money. And I realized that, wow, one of the meaning I made of that experience was that good things are impermanent and bad things are permanent and here to stay forever. And it felt like such an aha moment. And it also felt like such a relief to identify that, because I realized, wow, like this is the core of my anxiety and why I feel paralyzed, because I really do think that bad things are here forever. And it was the first time as I realized it consciously, I realized that's just simply not true. And I also recognized that as a child, like that was the meaning that I made as a child. And this childlike meaning that I had made had been the running undercurrent with my relationship with money, with my relationship with my business. And that was just like really scary and really paralyzing, because there's a sort of hopelessness for it. And, that made sense for me at the time as a child. Like, I forgive myself immediately because I recognized I was a child. Like, bad things felt permanent because as a child, I didn't have control over my life and my environment and the conditions that surrounded it. And I also didn't have the capacity to think beyond, because I was a child. Like, I didn't have a prefrontal cortex yet. And I also recognized, wow, I recognize how this story I've been telling myself, that good things are impermanent and bad things are permanent. I recognize, oh my gosh, that this understanding has colored my perception of some pretty significant life moments. And this one particular, this pretty significant story, an incident that I experienced when I was 17, like I had really been relating to it as, like a story of, abandonment. And what I totally missed in that interpretation was that it was actually a story of like self-discovery and a story of owning my own power. I didn't recognize that until I journaled all of this. And that was my moment of surrender as it relates to the negative self-talk I was feeling about this thing I want to launch for my business, because I was stuck in the paralysis of bad things are permanent. And I realized this story, it is how I made sense of a moment in the past. And it made sense for me as a child, and it's just not true. It doesn't fit my life anymore. And it's okay for me to release this. I also had a moment of surrender with full out healing. And so over this past weekend, I was thinking, I was looking for, excuse me, the will. I had the desire, but I was looking for the energy to really prepare and post more episodes, because I'm doing this 100 Days of Truth challenge. And I was really judging myself for missing some posting days, right? Because I said on the 100 Days of Truth, I'll do this every day for 100 days. And I was really spinning about that. And it's interesting. I was spinning about that, but at the same time, like, I fully knew there was like no way in hell I was doing a video on Saturday or whatever day it was. I was just like, the energy is not there, and that is the state of my being. And I guess it was, I had knew and understood that to be true for myself, and yet I still hadn't accepted that that meant that I wouldn't have this outcome that I said I wanted. And it was, I eventually, when I could accept that, hey, this is not gonna happen, I was able to be still with it and recognize, say, well, you actually covered yourself on this. One of my early videos, I think it is one of the, it has to be like in the first 5 days of the 100 Days of Truth challenge, I literally say, do not, and which you can check that video out, I literally say, do not expect a consistent schedule of me, because this shit is hard and scary, and I feel super vulnerable, and I need to, give myself grace. I need to give myself grace and allow myself to honor how I feel in this journey, right? Which means some days I can, I'll be able to record multiple videos and I'm gonna be on fire. And other days it's gonna be like, this is gonna be a pause moment. And I think about it, and like, I'm actually so proud of myself for having named that at the upfront with this. And it also demonstrates to me how much of a practice the healing tool of the day is, of giving myself grace, because I knew enough to give myself grace around this expectation, and yet I was still holding myself to do something that wasn't quite honoring the truth of where I was, even though I had already given myself space for it. And that's just to show, like, I don't think that's a failure. In fact, I think it's great, because the fact that I was kind of spinning and then came back to this space, is like that act of returning back to myself and returning to this tool and strategy it's like another deposit in my self-trusting. It's another deposit in my self-love. It's like I had thoughts and feelings that I observed that are not me and are not mine, and yet they're taking up space. And it caused me to feel away until I got still. And the power is that I got still. I chose stillness. The power is I chose grace. And I was able to like literally hug myself and be like, I love you, Sable. I'm so proud of you, Sable. And you know what? Today is a day, and you just need to be here. And I'm so grateful that you're letting me be here, And so it's which brings me to like such a huge lesson about these healing tools, is needing to use them is not a failure. And regardless of where I am in my healing journey, no matter how many times I need to do it, needing to use them doesn't mean I failed. It's actually an opportunity to deepen self-trust and deepen self-love. And so how I use this, like the new strategy of giving myself grace, what that means for me is I acknowledge my context or conditions, whatever it is. Like my body feels tired, or I feel kind of scared, or whatever needs acknowledgement, right? Then after acknowledging it, I let myself be where I am. And letting myself be where I am means if my body is tired, I let my body be tired. I don't try to make my tired body do things that tired bodies shouldn't be doing. Which simultaneously causes me to release the plan, release the expectation that isn't really aligned with the current truth of where I am. And that also requires a bit of trust too, that, and like a reminder of that everything is working in my favor. It's going to work out in the divine timing I meant for. And it is, you know, like I'm not missing out on anything, that things are still going to happen the way they're meant to for me. And the final step of this strategy is to just, which I've kind of spoken to already, but the final step of the strategy is just to like honor myself, because wow, like I just fucking did that. I confronted something that was really hard for me, and I chose to be kind to myself, and I chose kindness and compassion, and because of that I get to be where I am, and I actually meet my own needs in the real time, which is great. Now, employing this strategy, what it does for me is it gives me a whole lot of peace. It gives me a whole lot of peace. And even if as I say that, I feel an energy of like, there's that part of me that is trying to like, but what if this, but what if that, and we still have to do it. And that's where it's like the constant practice of releasing. But being able to do this, it does give me peace, because it's like accepting the truth of the matter, the reality of the situation, and like allowing myself to, it also allows me to actually rest, you know? And when I rest, I can return to whatever like my plan or desire was, renewed, and with the capacity to actually move towards whatever my desire was, you know? And it's like, it's great, because I'm like, wow, like it really didn't work for me before, because I just kept holding this harshness towards myself, and that was never restorative. And so ironically, the thing that I kept striving towards just stayed far and further away, because I'd never got the renewal I needed to be able to approach it with fresh energy. And so, yeah, that's the healing tool of the day, is giving myself grace. And I guess what I'm ending with is an invitation. I invite you to try this strategy. I invite you to, as you're trying this strategy, to really observe yourself without judgment. And so when I say that, I mean just like notice, how does it feel? What thoughts come up? What energy is in your body as you try this strategy? Do you notice your thoughts are resistant? Do you notice you feel excited, scared? Just notice all of those things, and, you know, get curious about that, and like explore whatever comes up, and end with reflecting what you've learned about yourself through that observation. That's it. That's our first ever healing tool of the day, which is giving myself grace. I hope that you give yourself grace. Please like this video if you've tried this strategy, if it resonates with you, if you're gonna try it. I would love to hear in the comments, how do you relate to this strategy, and what's your experience been with using this strategy? And or what's your how do you hope to use this strategy? Okay, thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.